So good afternoon. This has been again. I just wanted to share a little bit with you today, and really just take maybe 5 minutes or so to talk a little bit about shopper calls. And so one of the challenges when we think about taking a shopper call is thinking everybody on the other end of the phone is really shopping. And the reality is that I like to call it an information call. People are really looking for help, and they're looking for information about final arrangements, whether it be cemetery, funeral, cremation, or burial, or anything in between. And so, one of the most important things that I encourage people to do is you got to have a system in place, and a system that allows people to be themselves within that framework. And so, when you get ready to start doing a training, you're training your staff, or you're kind of working on your own skills, you got to be ready to make the connection with a family. You got to be ready to take the phone. If I'm running around and I'm going crazy and I'm on the run, I say, "Well, this is Ben. How may I help you?" And that's really not the right mindset. We got to take a deep breath, slow down, and just say, am I ready? I've got a notepad handy. I've got a pen ready, and I'm going to get to some place quiet with not a lot of background noise. And so I want to answer the phone. And one of the first things I'm going to do is, thank you for calling, West Harpeth Funeral Home. My name is Ben. How may I help you? And there's a lot of discussion right there. You say your whole name, your full name. I'm not going to say my full name, and I'm probably not going to say my last name. I want them to know my name personally, who they're talking to. And I've said, how may I help you? And they're going to give you a couple of statements. They're going to say, I'm calling about cemetery property, or I just want to get how much is a cemetery lot, or how much is a cremation, or how much is a funeral. And all those questions are really, if I'm the one answering the phone, I know I may be answering the rest of their questions. But if you're someone that's just going to answer it and transfer it to someone, it's important that you reassure the family. I understand you're calling about prices for X, cemetery, funeral, cremation. Do you mind if I get your name? And you tell me your name, and I'm going to write that down. And then I have your number as X, and I'm going to read that hopefully off the caller ID. It eliminates an objection of having to say, do you mind if I get your phone number in case we get disconnected? Which I might say if I don't have caller ID, but it eliminates an objection. If I just look at the caller ID and say, Mr. Jones, I have your number as, is that the best number to reach you in case we get disconnected? They say yes, and then I decide, who's this call going to go to? So they called and asked me about prices for cremation, or how much is a grave lot, or any of those things that I mentioned. And I'm going to say, do you mind if I ask Mr. Jones, has there been a death in your family? And for us, that is like a split in the road. We're going funeral director if there's been a death, and we go to our family service team if there hasn't been a death. And so, what I want you to do is, get that fork in the road and decide and say, I'm so sorry for your loss. If there's been a death, I'm going to get you to one of our funeral directors, and they're going to be able to answer all those questions that you have. Do you mind if I ask you, who is the person that passed away? They may have already told you, but I want to know their name and their relationship. And then if it's a pre-need situation where there hasn't been a death, again, they kind of told me why they're calling. They want to get prices on cemetery lots or cremation or funeral. And I've got the number, and I say, well, I'm going to put you on a brief hold, and I'm going to get, Ben, he's our advanced planning specialist, and he's going to be able to take great care of you and answer all your questions. So I'm going to go to my funeral director. I'm going to go over to my pre-need person, and I want to make sure that I give them all that information. And so when I give them the information, what I don't want to do is have them pick up the phone, and you've just given all that information to me. Mr. Jones is on the phone. You've told me why he's calling, and I pick up the phone and say, this has been, how may I help you? I just kind of went through what's called a warm transfer and I disregarded it all. So the family feels like they're starting all over. And that's the same deal with when there's been a death. We need to pick up the phone and acknowledge that there's been a death in the family. And so think those things through a little bit. You got to be ready to take the call. But when I pick up the phone, hi, Mr. Jones, my name is Ben. Our lady up front was telling me that you were calling about cemetery lot prices, or you were calling about cremation prices. Is that right? And they say yes or no. And so talking from a pre-need perspective a little bit, when you go to that next step, they confirm that's what they're calling about. And so, well, I really appreciate the opportunity to help you with that. And I'm going to make sure you get all your questions answered. Mr. Jones, do you mind if I ask, what made you decide to call today about cemetery lots or cremation? Most families avoid talking about death and dying. Was there something that kind of triggered you, making this phone call today? And that's where you got to just really shut up and listen. See kind of what they say and how they say it. It's not important what you know, it's important what they know. And so have a dialogue a little bit and figure out where they're coming from. And then the next thing is going to be a value offering. One of the things I want to do is listen to them, and they've told me kind of what made them decide to call today. And I say, I really appreciate you sharing that. And the good thing is that we've got some tools that are really going to be helpful for you and your family. And one of the things that I want to get for you is it's called a Final Wishes Planner. Many families, really benefit by having a booklet filled out that kind of outlines what their plans are and what their wishes are if something were to happen to them. Have you ever received one of those? We know the question is most likely no. Say, well, that's perfectly fine. That's really why I bring it up for you. And I'd like to be able to set a time to get this to you. I got some time available on Saturday morning, or would Monday afternoon be better for you? Once I've given him two options, I give two options every time I go to set an appointment. And he's going to say yes or no, right? And once they say, the yes, it's pretty easy. We set the appointment and move on. But if we say no, what do we do next? We need to make sure that we move forward. And what is that path? They say, well, look, I appreciate that. I really want the book, but I really just need to get a price. And Mr. Jones, I appreciate you letting me know that, because I realize price is important to you. But the reason I offered you the Final Wishes Planner, a book to help you gather and organize everything, is although price is really important, it would be to me too. But I also know that not having a plan before we go spending money is probably not a real good idea. So I'm sure you'd agree having some kind of plan in place first before you spend any money is the right thing to do. Would you agree with that? And they say yes or no, right? You can say, well, yeah, I agree with you, but I still want to get a price. And so when someone is that direct with you, at this point, I've kind of had my hand slapped twice and saying, look, I need a price. And so now I'm at my third time, and really I need to make sure I give them some pricing. So once I've, whether it's cremation shopper or funeral shopper or cemetery, shopper, my first up to this point is really the same kind of structure until I get to that second, what I call a hand slap, where, I really need to give the pricing, and I'm really trying to do what's in the best interest of the family. And so when I talk to them about this, it's all about, helping them understand the value of putting a plan in place. So when they get to that second hand slap, I've got to go ahead and give them some pricing. And so when it comes to, cemetery pricing, I like to let them know we have several different options here in the cemetery. But I will tell you, we give a free space for any military veterans. We also have a free space program in our long crypt section. And so they really start at zero and go up from there. I'd really, again, love to get you your Final Wishes Planner and set a time for us to tour the cemetery so I can show you where those options are and some of the different choices we have in the cemetery. Would there be a day next week that works for you? Would Monday be good or Wednesday be better? And so it's pretty straightforward. I think cemetery families want to get out and see it. And once the barrier's down, that they understand we start at zero and go up, it's fairly easy to use that. The next level of this is really talking about, cremation families. And I won't spend a lot of time talking about funeral, because there's not a lot of families that call you and say, hey, how much is the casket? Not to say it doesn't happen, but it's just not very common. What is common is, hey, I want to get a price on cremation. And I think we're all facing that. And when it comes to cremation shoppers, they've slapped my hand twice already, if you remember, because I offered some value in helping them put a plan in place and using our planner, and they've said no, and they said no, and I want a price. And a lot of times that price comes with terminology that I just want a direct cremation. And so that means that someone's kind of coached them to say direct cremation. Someone told them what a direct cremation was. And even still, if they don't really know, when they tell me I just want to get a price on cremation, they start clarifying that they don't want any kind of services. I don't want anything. I just want y'all to pick me up and cremate me and give my urn back to my family. And I completely, when they say that, I completely understand that. Has anyone ever explained to you what's included or what's involved in a service like a direct cremation? And that just gives me some perspective as to what they've been through. And so I'm going to explain to them from a value perspective, we're going to take care of everything for you. From the time you pass away, we're going to pick you up and bring you into our care at the funeral home. We're going to make sure that we take care of getting the death certificates that will enable us to get the cremation permit. We're going to take care of the actual cremation itself, the crematory fee. We're going to take care of the alternative container, which you actually cremated in. And we're also going to have an allowance for an urn in there for your family. We're going to include a small amount of sales tax, which is on merchandise only. And we're also going to include 3 death certificates. That way you'd have, one that's for the cremation to take place and the other for your family to be able to settle any affairs that they may need to. And so with all that, our total price for that is $2,600. Is that about what you were thinking? So I don't want to give them, hey, it's this much, but you had to add tax, you need to add this, you need to add that. We know the numbers. We know what it is. Be straightforward. Once you've gotten to this point, you need to be able to give a price. And when I give the price, I don't throw it out there like mud on the wall. I want to be able to say, is that about what you were thinking? And they say yes or no. If they say, hey, that seems fair, say, that's great. I'll be happy to help you with that. Is there some time next week we could get together? I've got time available on Tuesday or Thursday, which would be better for you. If they say no, that's not good. You got to know your competition. You need to know what you offer and why you're worth the price. And so that's something you'll have to do in your individual areas. But just be cognizant on that the person on the other end of the phone, they called you. They called for help. They called for information. Just be ready to take the call. Be yourself. Be honest. Be sincere. Some best practices along the way. Would it be okay, that I email you just a summary of our conversation? If I'm fixing to give somebody prices on cremation, I want to say I'll be happy to get that to you. And before I explain everything that's included in that, can I get your email address? That way I can just, once we hang up the phone, I'll send you a summary of our call. That way you don't have to remember everything and write everything down. Same thing with cemetery. Take them to your website, show them around, give them the resources, and always, 30, 45 minutes after you hang up with that family, if they don't arrive at a decision with you, and this is really pre-need or at need, I'd follow back up with them, call them and say, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to help you earlier. I just wanted to follow up with you and see if you've made a decision. If there's any other questions that popped up or anything I can help you with. So continue to be a resource to your families. Continue to bare your soul a little bit and show them who you are and that you really care about taking care of their family. So I hope this helps you a little bit. If I can do anything for you, please let me know.